Welcome to another deep dive, this time into a world that existed millions of years ago.
A world we can only glimpse through the fascinating clues left behind.
Yeah, fossils.
Fossils. Most people think of fossils as just dinosaur bones,
Right.
but it's so much more than that.
It is.
It's like having pieces of a giant jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
And with each piece we find,
Uh-huh.
we get a clearer picture of the incredible history of life on Earth.
You're right, and it's not just bones, is it?
No.
There are so many different types of fossils.
Yeah,
You've got footprints, fossilized poop,
exactly.
even the burrows left behind by ancient creatures.
Exactly. Each type of fossil tells its own unique story.
Okay.
Take trace fossils, for example.
Okay.
Imagine you're walking along a beach and you come across a set of dinosaur footprints.
Okay.
Suddenly, you're transported back in time,
Right.
picturing this massive creature lumbering across the sand.
Wow, just a set of footprints can be that evocative. It's like
Yeah.
stepping into their world.
It is.
But I'm curious, how do scientists even begin to make sense of all this?
Right.
It must take some serious detective work.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
That's where paleontology comes in.
Okay.
Paleontologists are like detectives of the prehistoric world,
Right.
using all sorts of tools and techniques to uncover the secrets hidden within these ancient remnants.
So what's in a paleontologist's toolkit?
Well,
What are some of the techniques they use to piece together these ancient puzzles?
one of the most important tools is excavation.
Yeah.
Carefully digging up fossils from the rock layers where they've been entombed for millions of years.
Right?
It's a delicate process that requires a lot of patience and precision.
I can imagine it's like an archaeological dig, but on a much grander timescale.
Right.
So once they've got the fossil out of the ground, what happens next?
Then comes the analysis.
Okay.
Paleontologists use all sorts of methods to study fossils,
Right.
from examining their physical characteristics to analyzing their chemical composition.
Okay.
And one of the most crucial aspects is dating,
Oh.
determining the age of these ancient remains.
Okay. Dating fossils. That sounds tricky.
It can be.
How do you put an age on something that's been buried for millions of years? Is
Yeah.
it like carbon dating?
Carbon dating is one method,
Okay.
but it's only useful for relatively recent fossils, up to about 50,000 years old.
Okay.
For older fossils, we rely on a technique called radiometric dating,
Okay.
which utilizes the predictable decay of radioactive isotopes.
Okay. Break that down for me. What are isotopes?
Okay.
And how do they help us date fossils?
Think back to high school chemistry class.
Huh?
Remember atoms?
Okay.
Isotopes are atoms of the same element that have different numbers of neutrons.
Okay.
Some of these isotopes are unstable and decay radioactively over time,
Right.
transforming into other elements at a very predictable rate.
Uh-huh.
It's like a clock ticking away inside the rock.
So if we know the rate at which these isotopes decay,
Right.
we can measure how much of the original isotope is left in the fossil and calculate how long it's been since it formed.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's like having a built-in timestamp within the fossil itself.
That's so cool.
And different isotopes have different decay rates.
Okay.
So we can choose the right one depending on the age of the fossil we're studying.
That's incredibly clever.
It's pretty neat.
But I'm guessing it's not always that straightforward.
You're right.
Okay.
Sometimes finding the right material for radiometric dating can be a challenge,
Uh-huh.
and the fossil itself might not contain the right isotopes.
Yeah.
But luckily, we have another method up our sleeve,
Okay.
relative dating.
Okay, so relative dating doesn't give us an exact age,
No,
but it helps us understand the order of events.
exactly.
How does that work?
It's all about the rock layers.
Okay.
Imagine digging a trench through the earth.
Okay.
You'll notice distinct layers of rock
Uh-huh.
stacked on top of each other like a giant layer cake.
Okay.
This is called stratigraphy.
So are you saying the deeper you go, the older the rocks get?
Exactly. The principle of superposition states that in undisturbed rock layers,
Right.
the oldest layers are found at the bottom and the youngest layers are at the top.
Okay.
So if we find a fossil in a deeper layer,
Uh-huh.
we know it's generally older than one found in a layer closer to the surface.
Okay, that makes sense. So like digging through a well-organized closet,
Yeah,
the clothes at the bottom are the ones you haven't worn in ages.
exactly.
But how can we be sure those layers haven't been disturbed over millions of years?
Right.
Earthquakes, volcanoes, all
Yeah.
sorts of things could shake things up.
That's a great point, and you're right.
Okay.
Geological events can indeed disrupt rock layers,
Uh-huh.
making things a bit more complex.
Yeah.
But even in those cases, there are ways to figure out the order of events.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How do paleontologists solve those geological puzzles?
One way is to look for index fossils.
Okay.
These are fossils of organisms that were very common,
Uh-huh.
geographically widespread, and lived for a relatively short period of time. Think of them like bookmarks in the pages of Earth's history.
Ah, I see.
Yeah,
So if you find the same index fossil in different locations, you can assume those rock layers formed around the same time,
exactly.
even if they're miles apart.
It's like having a common thread that ties different parts of the story together.
I like that.
Yeah,
And by comparing the index fossils found in different layers, we can create a relative timeline of events, even if we don't have exact dates.
precisely.
So we've got our tools for dating fossils,
We do.
but I'm still fascinated by the fossils themselves.
Right.
How do these ancient remains actually become fossils?
Yeah,
It seems like quite a transformation.
it is quite a journey.
Yeah.
Imagine a dinosaur dying in a lush forest.
Okay.
Its body lies on the forest floor, exposed to the elements.
I'm guessing that's not a good start for becoming a fossil.
You're right.
Okay.
For a fossil to form, the organism needs to be buried quickly,
Okay.
ideally in an environment where sediment is constantly accumulating.
Right.
Think of a river delta, or the bottom of a lake or ocean.
Okay, so we've got our dinosaur buried under layers of mud and sand.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Now the real magic begins.
Okay.
Over time, the soft tissues of the dinosaur decompose, leaving behind the harder parts, like bones, teeth, and claws.
So it's like nature's way of stripping away the flesh, leaving behind the skeletal framework.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as more sediment piles on top, the pressure increases,
Okay.
compacting the layers and squeezing out water.
Yeah.
The surrounding sediment gradually hardens into rock,
Right.
encasing the dinosaur's remains within its stony tomb.
Wow. It's like the dinosaurs becoming part of the rock itself.
It is.
And that's not all.
That's not all.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Groundwater rich in dissolved minerals seeps through the rock layers,
Okay.
carrying those minerals into the spaces within the bones.
So the minerals are like tiny construction workers.
Yes,
Filling in the gaps and reinforcing the structure.
you got it.
Over millions of years, those minerals replace the original bone material molecule by molecule
Yeah.
until the bone is essentially turned to stone.
Right.
It's like a slow-motion petrification process, preserving the bone's shape and structure in incredible detail.
It is.
So it's not just about being buried.
No.
It's about a complex interplay of burial, pressure, and mineral replacement that transforms these remains into solid rock.
That's right.
But we've only been talking about bones.
Mm-hmm.
What about those other types of fossils?
Right.
How do things like footprints or burrows become fossilized?
That's a great question. Remember those dinosaur footprints we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Imagine those tracks being made in soft mud.
Okay.
If that mud is quickly buried by another layer of sediment before the tracks are eroded away, they too can become fossilized.
So it's the same principle.
Yes.
Quick burial and then a slow process of hardening and mineral replacement.
Precisely.
It's like capturing a snapshot of a moment in time, preserving evidence of the creature's activity.
Yeah.
Even though the creature itself might not have been fossilized.
Exactly.
This is amazing. It's like a whole different world is opening up to me.
It is pretty cool.
We've got fossilized bones,
Yeah.
footprints, burrows. What other types of fossils are out there?
Well, sometimes the original organism decays completely,
Okay.
leaving behind an empty space in the rock that reflects its shape.
Okay.
This is called a mold fossil.
Mold fossil. Okay.
It's like nature created a mold of the creature before it disappeared.
So if you poured plaster into that mold, you'd get a replica of the original organism.
Exactly. And sometimes that's exactly what happens naturally.
Oh, wow.
If the empty space is later filled in with minerals,
Okay.
it creates a replica of the original organism,
Uh-huh.
known as a cast fossil,
Cast fossil. Okay.
like nature's way of creating a sculpture.
Wow. A fossil sculpture. That's incredible.
It's neat.
But what about details? Can we see the intricate details of these ancient creatures?
Sometimes.
Or are fossils just basic shapes?
Sometimes we get lucky. And the fossilization process preserves amazing details.
Oh, cool.
Take permineralized fossils, for example.
Permineralized.
Yeah.
That sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
It's like the mineral replacement process we talked about earlier.
Okay.
But on a much finer scale,
Uh-huh.
instead of just filling in the large spaces,
Right.
minerals seep into the tiny pores and spaces within the original organic material.
Okay.
essentially creating a mineral replica of the original structure.
So it's like taking a 3D snapshot of the organism's internal structure.
You got it.
That's incredible. What kind of details can we see?
Sometimes it's possible to see cell structures,
Wow.
the patterns of blood vessels, even the delicate veins in a leaf.
That's so cool.
It's like having a microscopic window into the past.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah,
We've got all these different types of fossils,
we do.
each telling its own unique story.
Yeah.
And we have the tools to date them and piece together their chronological order. But what does it all actually tell us about the history of life?
That's where the real fun begins.
Okay.
The fossil record, as we call it, is like a giant jigsaw puzzle.
Right.
And with each fossil we find,
Huh?
we add another piece to that puzzle.
Yeah.
And as we start to see the bigger picture emerge,
You're right.
it reveals an incredible story.
Okay.
A story of evolution, extinction, and the incredible diversity of life that has existed on Earth.
I'm hooked.
Good.
You've convinced me that fossils are much more than just rocks.
They are.
They're windows into lost worlds,
Yeah.
time capsules that allow us to trace the epic journey of life on our planet.
They really are.
All right, let's keep going.
Let's do it.
Last time we talked about how fossils form
Yeah.
the different types of fossils
Uh-huh.
and the tools paleontologists use to date these ancient remnants.
It's pretty amazing.
It's amazing how much information they can extract from a single bone or footprint.
It really is. But as much as we can learn from fossils,
Right.
we also have to acknowledge the limitations.
Okay.
The fossil record is like a book with many missing pages.
Right.
And interpreting those pages
Yeah.
can be tricky.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
We're dealing with incomplete data,
Right.
and that can make it difficult to draw definitive conclusions.
It can.
What are some of the biggest challenges paleontologists face when trying to piece together the history of life?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is the fact that fossilization is a rare occurrence.
Okay.
Most organisms that have ever lived on Earth simply decayed without leaving a trace.
Right.
They were either eaten by scavengers, decomposed by bacteria, or their remains were simply eroded away.
So we're only getting a glimpse,
Right.
a snapshot of a much bigger picture.
Exactly.
What factors influence whether or not something becomes a fossil?
Well, having hard parts definitely helps.
Okay.
Organisms with bones, teeth, or shells
Right.
are far more likely to fossilize than those with soft bodies.
Makes sense.
Think about a jellyfish versus a crab.
Okay.
The crab, with its hard exoskeleton, has a much better chance of leaving behind a fossil.
Makes sense. It's like the difference between a paperback book and a leather-bound volume.
Yeah,
The leather-bound one is going to stand the test of time much better.
exactly.
But even if something has hard parts, it still needs to be in the right place at the right time, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The environment plays a huge role.
Okay.
Rapid burial in sediment is crucial.
Right.
If an organism dies in a place where sediment is constantly accumulating,
Mm-hmm.
like the bottom of an ocean or a river delta,
Okay.
it has a better chance of being quickly covered and protected from scavengers and the elements.
So being buried alive, in a sense, is the key to achieving fossil immortality.
Right.
But even if fossil forms, isn't it still possible for it to be destroyed before we ever find it?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
Fossils are fragile,
Right.
and they can be destroyed by all sorts of geological processes,
Yeah.
erosion, tectonic activity.
Mhm.
Even the weight of overlying rock layers can crush or obliterate them. It's estimated that only a tiny fraction of all the fossils that have ever formed are actually preserved and accessible to us today.
Wow. That's a sobering thought.
It is.
It makes those fossils we do find even more precious.
Yeah.
But let's talk about interpretation.
Okay.
You mentioned that interpreting the clues left behind by fossils isn't always easy.
No, it's not.
Can you give me some examples of those challenges?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's take trace fossils, for example.
Okay.
We talked about dinosaur footprints earlier.
Right.
Finding a set of footprints is exciting,
Yeah.
but it only tells us a limited amount of information.
Right.
We can see the size and shape of the feet,
Then
you know, maybe the length of the stride,
Yeah.
but what else can we infer?
Okay, I see what you mean. A footprint doesn't tell us everything about the animal that made it.
No,
It's like trying to judge a book by its cover.
Right.
We can get some clues,
Yeah,
but we're missing the full story.
exactly. We can't tell for sure what the animal was doing,
Right.
whether it was walking, running, or dragging its feet.
Oh.
We don't know if it was alone
Right.
or if there were others nearby, and we can't determine its age, sex, or even what it ate.
So trace fossils are like tantalizing snippets of information.
Yeah,
They spark our curiosity but leave us wanting more.
they do.
But I imagine body fossils like bones and teeth provide a lot more detail, right?
They certainly do.
Okay.
But even with body fossils, we have to be careful about our interpretations.
Okay.
We can't always be sure what an animal looked like based solely on its skeleton.
Wait, really? So you can have a completely wrong idea about what a dinosaur looked like?
It's definitely possible.
Wow.
Take feathers, for example.
Okay.
For a long time, we assumed that dinosaurs were scaly reptilian creatures.
Uh-huh.
But in recent decades, we've
Yeah.
discovered a wealth of fossils showing that many dinosaurs,
Okay.
especially theropods,
Yeah.
the group that includes T-Rex and Velociraptor,
Right.
were actually feathered.
That's a game changer.
It is.
So our image of these iconic creatures has been completely transformed by new fossil discoveries.
Right. And it makes you wonder what other surprises might be lurking in the fossil record.
Exactly. And that brings us to another challenge.
Okay.
Understanding the evolutionary relationships between different organisms.
Okay.
The fossil record is full of gaps,
Right.
and it can be difficult to trace the lineages of different groups.
So it's like trying to create a family tree, but with half the names missing
Yeah,
and the relationships between the remaining members unclear.
precisely. And sometimes new fossil discoveries
Okay.
completely overturn our previous assumptions about those relationships.
Okay.
Take the Ediacaran biota, for example.
We touched on them briefly before.
We did.
These are the mysterious soft-bodied organisms that lived before the Cambrian explosion, right?
That's right. The Ediacaran biota represents some of the earliest complex life forms we know of,
Right?
but their fossils are incredibly strange
Okay.
and often difficult to interpret.
Yeah.
They don't resemble any living organisms today.
And there's a lot of debate about their evolutionary relationships.
So we're talking about creatures so unusual that they might not even fit into our current understanding of the tree of life.
Exactly. Some scientists think they were early animals,
Right.
while others believe they represent an entirely extinct branch of life.
Wow.
A completely different experiment in multicellular life
Mm-hmm.
that simply didn't make it.
Wow, that's mind-blowing.
It is.
It's like discovering a lost civilization with technology and culture completely alien to our own.
Yeah.
And because their fossils are often just impressions in the rock,
Right.
it makes it even harder to decipher their secrets.
It does.
It's a paleontological puzzle of epic proportions.
It is.
The Ediacaran biota are like a giant question mark in the fossil record,
Yeah.
reminding us that there's still so much we don't know about the early history of life on Earth.
So much we don't know.
It's both humbling and exciting.
It is.
We're constantly learning,
Yeah.
constantly revising our understanding of the past. But it also makes me wonder, with all these challenges and uncertainties, how can we be sure that our interpretations of the fossil record are accurate?
Right.
How can we be sure we're not just seeing what we want to see?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it gets to the heart of the scientific method.
Okay.
Paleontology, like all sciences, relies on evidence, observation, and testing.
Right.
We don't just make up stories about the past.
Okay.
We base our conclusions on the physical evidence preserved in the fossils themselves.
So it's not just about speculation and imagination.
No.
It's about rigorous analysis and a constant willingness to revise our theories in light of new evidence.
Precisely.
And the more fossils we find, the more data we have to work with.
Yeah.
And the more confident we can be in our interpretations.
Right.
It's like solving a jigsaw puzzle.
Exactly.
The more pieces we find, the clearer the picture becomes.
And clearer the picture becomes.
But even with a complete puzzle, there are always multiple ways to interpret the image, right?
Absolutely. And that's where healthy scientific debate comes in.
Okay.
Different paleontologists may have different interpretations of the same evidence,
Okay.
and that's okay.
Okay.
It's through these debates,
Right.
through the process of challenging each other's ideas,
Yeah.
that we refine our understanding and move closer to the truth.
So it's not about being right or wrong,
No.
but about constantly questioning, refining, and collaborating to build a more accurate picture of the past.
Exactly. It's a dynamic process,
Right.
and it's what makes paleontology so exciting.
Yeah.
There's always something new to discover, some new mystery to unravel.
Speaking of mysteries, we talked earlier about the KT boundary,
Uh-huh.
the dramatic event that wiped out the dinosaurs.
Right.
But how can we be so sure that an asteroid was responsible?
Okay.
What kind of evidence do paleontologists look for to support such a catastrophic claim?
Well, one of the key pieces of evidence is a thin layer of clay found in rock formations all over the world.
Okay.
This layer, known as the KT boundary layer, marks the transition between the Cretaceous period and the Paleogene period,
Okay.
and it contains unusually high levels of the element iridium.
Okay, iridium. Why is that significant?
Iridium is a very rare element on Earth's surface,
Okay.
but it's much more abundant in asteroids and meteorites.
Okay.
So finding a sudden spike in the iridium levels at the KT boundary strongly suggests that an extraterrestrial impact occurred at that time.
It's like a cosmic fingerprint pointing to a cataclysmic event.
It is.
But iridium alone isn't enough to seal the deal, is it?
You're right.
There must be other evidence to support the asteroid impact theory.
You're right. We also find shocked quartz grains in the KT boundary layer.
Okay.
These are quartz crystals that have been deformed by the intense pressure and heat of an impact.
Okay.
And we see tektites,
Okay.
which are tiny droplets of molten rock that were ejected into the atmosphere during the impact and then rained down on Earth.
So it's like a forensic investigation with multiple lines of evidence converging to point to the same conclusion.
Right.
A massive asteroid impact.
A massive asteroid impact.
But even with all this evidence, there's still room for debate, right?
You're absolutely right.
Science is rarely black and white.
There are always alternative explanations.
Right.
And scientists are constantly testing and refining their theories.
Okay.
But in the case of the KT extinction, the evidence for an asteroid impact is incredibly strong.
Okay.
And it's the most widely accepted explanation among paleontologists today.
Okay, so we've got this catastrophic impact wiping out the dinosaurs
Yeah.
and paving the way for the rise of mammals.
Right.
It's a dramatic turning point in Earth's history, but it makes me wonder, what about the survivors?
Right.
How did life recover from such a devastating event?
That's a great question, and it's one that paleontologists are still trying to answer.
Okay.
We know that the KT extinction was a mass extinction, wiping out an estimated 76% of plant and animal species on Earth.
Wow.
But some groups managed to survive.
Right.
And in the aftermath of the extinction, they diversified and evolved, filling the ecological niches left vacant by the dinosaurs.
So it's like a reset button was pressed,
Yeah.
and life had a chance to start anew.
Right.
What kinds of creatures were able to make it through this apocalyptic event?
Well, small mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, fish, insects,
Wow.
they all managed to weather the storm.
Okay.
They were probably better able to adapt to the changing environmental conditions,
Mm-hmm.
maybe by burrowing underground, having a wider diet, or being able to reproduce quickly.
It's fascinating to think about the resilience of life.
It is.
Its ability to bounce back even from the most catastrophic events.
Yeah,
It speaks to the incredible adaptability and diversity of life on Earth.
absolutely. The story of life is a story of survival, adaptation, and evolution.
Yeah.
And the fossil record provides us with a glimpse into that incredible journey,
Right.
showing us how life has changed and diversified over millions of years.
It's amazing to think that these seemingly inert rocks hold the keys to understanding the epic history of life on our planet.
It is.
And it makes me wonder what other incredible events, what other dramatic twists and turns are waiting to be discovered hidden within those layers of rock.
There are countless stories still waiting to be told.
Yeah.
Countless mysteries yet to be solved.
Right.
And with each new fossil discovery, we add another chapter to that grand narrative, unveiling new insights into the fascinating story of life on Earth.
Okay, I'm hooked. Lead the way. I'm eager to uncover more of these ancient secrets. We've talked about the challenges of interpreting the fossil record, and we've even touched on some of the dramatic events that have shaped the history of life, like the KT extinction.
It's been quite a journey.
It has, but I'm ready for more. What other epic tales can the fossil record tell us?
Well, let's go back to the very beginning,
Okay.
to a time long before the dinosaurs roamed the Earth,
Right.
to a period known as the Precambrian.
Precambrian, okay.
This is the earliest and longest chapter in Earth's history,
Wow.
spanning billions of years,
Okay.
from the planet's formation to about 541 million years ago.
Wow, that's almost 90% of Earth's history.
It is.
But I thought the Cambrian explosion, which happened around 541 million years ago, was considered the Big Bang of animal life.
Right.
Was there anything going on before that?
The Cambrian explosion was indeed a pivotal moment,
Right.
a time when animal life diversified rapidly and dramatically,
Yeah.
but life itself emerged much, much earlier.
Okay.
During those vast stretches of Precambrian time,
Yep.
back then the Earth was a very different place.
Uh-huh.
The atmosphere was mostly devoid of oxygen.
Okay.
The continents were arranged differently,
Right.
and the only inhabitants were single-celled organisms like bacteria and archaea.
So for billions of years, it was a world of microscopic life.
Yeah,
A hidden world teeming with tiny organisms. It's hard to imagine those humble beginnings leading to the incredible diversity of life we see today.
It's truly remarkable, isn't it?
It is.
But those microscopic pioneers were busy laying the groundwork for everything that was to come.
Okay.
They were the first to evolve photosynthesis, using sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into energy and releasing oxygen as a byproduct.
So these tiny organisms were the ones who oxygenated the planet,
They were.
paving the way for the evolution of more complex life forms that require oxygen to survive.
Exactly.
It's like they set the stage for the grand drama of evolution to unfold.
They did.
And as oxygen levels rose in the atmosphere and oceans,
Yes.
it created new opportunities for life to evolve and diversify.
It did.
Around 2.5 billion years ago,
Yeah.
we see the first evidence of eukaryotic cells.
That's
Cells with a nucleus and other complex structures.
exactly.
Okay, so eukaryotic cells are a big deal in the evolutionary story, right?
Huge.
They're the building blocks of all multicellular organisms, including plants, animals, and fungi.
Precisely, the evolution of eukaryotic cells was a pivotal moment in the history of life,
Okay.
setting the stage for the emergence of multicellular organisms.
So somewhere in the murky depths of the Precambrian,
Yeah.
those single-celled eukaryotes began to cooperate, forming colonies and eventually leading to the first truly multicellular organisms.
That's right.
So teamwork makes the dream work,
It does.
even at the cellular level.
Even at the cellular level.
But what did those early multicellular organisms look like?
It's a good question.
Were they the first animals?
That's a question that has puzzled paleontologists for decades.
Okay.
The fossil record from the late Precambrian is sparse and often difficult to interpret.
Uh-huh.
But we do find tantalizing glimpses of strange and wonderful creatures.
Okay.
Remember the Ediacaran biota we talked about earlier?
Right. The mysterious soft-bodied organisms that lived before the Cambrian explosion.
That's right.
They were so unusual that some scientists even think they might represent a completely extinct branch of life.
Exactly. The Ediacaran biota are a testament to the incredible diversity and experimentation that occurred during those early stages of multicellular life.
Right.
And while their exact place in the evolutionary tree is still debated,
Okay.
their fossils provide valuable insights into the evolution of complex life forms.
It's like peeking into a lost world.
Yeah.
A world teeming with strange and alien creatures unlike anything we see today.
Right.
And then, boom, the Cambrian explosion happens.
Oh.
And suddenly the fossil record explodes with an incredible array of new animal life.
It does.
What triggered this sudden burst of evolution?
That's one of the biggest mysteries in paleontology.
Okay.
There are many theories,
Okay.
each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
Some scientists think it was due to a rise in oxygen levels,
Okay.
reaching a critical threshold that allowed for the evolution of larger, more complex animals.
Okay.
Others suggest it was triggered by changes in ocean chemistry, perhaps an increase in the availability of nutrients,
Uh-huh.
and still others point to the evolution of new developmental genes,
Okay.
allowing for a greater range of body plans and adaptations.
So it was likely a combination of factors.
Probably.
A perfect storm of evolutionary innovation that set the stage for the Cambrian explosion.
Exactly.
And from there, animal life just took off, radiating into a dazzling array of forms and filling all sorts of ecological niches.
That's right. The Cambrian explosion marks a turning point in the history of life,
Okay.
a time when the blueprint for most major animal groups was laid down.
Wow.
It's a testament to the incredible power of evolution to generate diversity and complexity.
It's amazing to think that all the incredible animals we see today,
Yeah.
from insects to whales, from birds to humans,
I know.
can trace their ancestry back to those humble creatures that emerged from the Cambrian explosion.
It is pretty amazing.
It's a legacy that continues to this day.
It does.
This deep dive into the fossil record has been truly mind-blowing.
It has been fun.
It's amazing to think that these seemingly inert rocks hold the keys to understanding the epic history of life on Earth.
They do.
It's like having a time machine allowing us to journey back to those ancient worlds and witness the grand sweep of evolution firsthand.
That's a great way to put it.
And it's a journey that never truly ends.
It doesn't.
With each new fossil discovery, we gain new insights,
Right.
refine our understanding, and add another piece to the grand evolutionary puzzle.
Exactly.
Who knows what incredible creatures and amazing events are still waiting to be discovered,
Who knows?
hidden within those layers of rock.
That's what's so exciting about it.
That's what I find so exciting. It's a never-ending quest for knowledge,
It is.
a constant unraveling of the mysteries of the past.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that we are part of this incredible story, a story that stretches back billions of years and continues to unfold today.
It's a pretty amazing story.
It is so. Thank you for taking us on this incredible journey through time. I can't wait to see what other secrets the fossil record reveals in the years to come.
The pleasure was all mine. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep marveling at the wonders of the ancient world.